So, hello Preti. I'm very, very glad to have you here so we can talk about your book, We That Are Young, or in German, Wir, die wir jung sind. And I would really like to ask you some questions. First of all, I mean, the book was written in English, but you included a lot of Hindi sentences in it. And, well, I mean, many persons won't be able to understand it. But why did you still opt to do it?
Because I wanted to break that tradition of always having to explain when there's other words, other foreign words or something different in a text, as if we have to assume that all the readers are only speaking one language. And usually those words are italicized or they're somehow explained in brackets or something like this. But for me to make this decision was a political and aesthetic decision to say something that we can't always understand everything that we encounter. And, these characters, they're all Indian, living in India. So they don't have to explain this stuff to each other, except one of them who has 15 years in America and he's forgotten a lot of his language. So then he gets these explanations because he's relearning and he's remembering how to speak his original language. So, for me, this was a very important decision because I wanted to say something about how text looks on the page and how political that actually is.
Okay, I must admit I was sometimes really confused because in the German version there are some translations but not all, so sometimes I really have the feeling I don't get an essential thing that is maybe very relevant to the plot. But, well, you talked already about politics. I mean, perception is a very important thing. And I wonder, I mean, I'm white, I'm young, I was raised in a Western country, my knowledge about India is limited, but by what I learned in Bollywood movies, what is not a very realistic impression. What do you think about us reading the book, being able to fully understand it or not, or what we will make out of it?
Even when you watch Bollywood, you're looking at something in translation because you're reading subtitles, aren't you?
No, they're synchronized in German, actually.
Yeah, they're synchronized in German. I didn't know that. Okay, so that isn't realistic either, is it? Because someone else has made some choices. And do you always understand every world that you move in? When you go into, when you read Shakespeare, you don't necessarily understand everything and you have to go and look it up. Or even when you go onto different social classes, you don't always understand the codes in the language. This is the real world. And the book is a kind of reflection of the way that human beings use language to construct their identities. And that sometimes is a very mixed identity. I mean, you say that you're white in a way, but that's simply to do with, an appearance or something, a kind of place that you feel like you occupy in the world. But all of us are much more complicated than what we look like on the outside. And our minds work in different ways. I grew up in a multilingual environment, so I just wanted to reflect with truthfulness that these two languages are equal to these people.
I must admit, to this point, I'm already impressed by you, really. And politics, very important topic. And I think you're somehow a feminist. Did I understood that right?
Absolutely, yes.
Wonderful. I really welcome that. And do you would say this book is somehow a feminist book, and is it more like an inspiration with some of the very tough female characters, or is it in some way also a warning? I mean, we have a real gender war in this book. What would you say?
Yes, I think, these are women who are trying to make it themselves in the world. They're trying to do their best. One of them is a young woman. She wants to make change for climate. So she's trying to be a sort of eco-warrior and so on. But, it doesn't end well for them. And I don't think that a book can have utopian vision. It doesn't have to have a happy ending to do that. It doesn't have to, as you say, end well. It doesn't have to make the reader feel hugged or comfortable. Sometimes you can do more by leaving that open. You don't have to have political answers in this novel, but you can make suggestions about how we can change our own world as readers. And I think that's what I was trying to do. So even while they're struggling to do better, the society keeps them down.
Definitely, and I must say it's not a feel-good book. It was really, I mean, the ending really, really shocked me. And no, I'm not gonna tell you what it was, but I was like, oh my God, why did she do it? But you're also an activist for human rights, and it's neither a new topic nor one we will find solutions for the problems easily. What would you say is the most important fight we have to fight for human rights, and why did you decide to write another book about it?
Well, for me, the most important fight for human rights is the climate in many ways. This is where we have to spend the most of our attention now to understand how that's going to affect people and affect our existence on this planet. And after that, it's education, because culture, I feel like, is something that gets ignored sometimes because we have these pressing concerns about food security and water security and global warming, and these are very, very important things. But on the sort of everyday level, culture and education and what we're taught and who teaches it and how we understand our world from a very early age is very, very, very powerful. So in my own sense of activism, when I'm teaching, I'm always trying to question the system and undermine and bring in new influences and different voices, people who have been silenced, women, writers of colour, all of these different kinds of things which we don't necessarily get in our education, because from a very young age we need to understand why our world is so mixed. If we don't understand that, we will always be vulnerable to governments and forces that want to keep us separated for no other reason than some kind of structural ideology that just doesn't exist actually in a kind of innate sense in humans.
You make me nearly speechless, I must admit. I mean, yes, these are very powerful messages, but do you think we can really achieve a better world? I mean, that's a very flat question, but...
Look, you know, what do we mean by a better world? Is it equality in a very obvious sense? Or is it just remembering that everything that we do that keeps us divided from each other is based on fear for ourselves? If you can tackle that sense that someone else is going to take something from you because of your own insecurities and your own position, your own fearfulness, then you have to ask yourselves, why do you feel like resources are being so strained? And let's look at that problem first. Because if we understand that these resources can be protected and then shared, properly shared, equally shared, so we don't look at a different colour of person as less human than us, less civilized than us in some way. If we can understand that these resources belong to all of us equally and it's us to protect them, not just to consume them, then maybe we can really change the world. Yeah, we can make a difference.
I really hope you will turn out to be right and that your opinion will be the public opinion, because, well, equality would probably the very best way for a better world. And already last question. What do you personally consider to be the most important message of your book?
Wow, that is a big question. Well, there's a really important question there of how to be human and what constitutes a human. And I think that is the most important idea in this novel. Who is it that can tell me who I am? And if the answer that comes back to you is no one, nothing, then you have to ask yourself, then how do you want to choose to live your life? That's the way I want the book to be understood.
This raises the question, what do you think who you are and what makes you human?
Well, for me personally, who do I think I am? I'm everything that's constituted my identity, from very many different kinds of language to cultural influences, to the place I was born in, to the history of partition and division that my parents came from, to England, and the history of women subjugated under patriarchy. All of those things are carried in our bodies, and I think that I'm a product of all of that, but I also have certain decisions to make about how I want to make that into a whole identity and not feel schizophrenic about that, and write certain texts and ways that reflect that unity even while they look at divisions. And that's my answer to your very intense question at 9:30 in the morning.
Yes, well, I really want to thank you that you had the time for us, that you answered some very tough questions even so early in the morning. I hope you will have a pleasant flight back to England and that you will write another novel for us, maybe. Is there something coming?
Yes, I am working on something. Yeah.
That are very good news, and I hope you already read the novel. If not, this is your book. I think we had a very, very awesome author. In English, it's called We That Are Young. So please read the book, follow this author, and become better humans. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.